Hey everybody, Luke Allen here, back with another iOS tutorial. Today I want to talk about what the best way is to respond to binding value changes in a toggle control. Now I like to keep these short and sweet so you can get back to whatever you're working on, so I'll just jump right into it. So I've got a super simple SwiftUI view here, and I'm just going to add a toggle to it and kind of go through the motions of what you have to do for this to work. So when you create a toggle, you get a few different initializer options here. They're all kind of the same thing at the end of the day. It's a label and an is-on binding, right? So the binding of a Boolean type is what's important here. I like this one because it just looks prettier to me. So I'll just go ahead and create a simple label here that is named setting. And for the binding input, I'll just show you, I have a view model here created. I kind of like in these tutorials to kind of show how I would actually do this in a production environment. A lot of tutorials kind of just give you the easy version, but I don't want to pass on any bad habits through that. So just a little background on why I'm doing this. So you have an observable object view model, which is a common thing in SwiftUI. You have your published variable setting, which is what we're going to bind to. So we just give it that view model dot setting here, and we're good to go, right? And I'm sure you've seen this approach before. You create a published variable and pass it to the toggle, or a state variable and pass it to the toggle, same thing, right? And what's kind of awkward about this is there's no action you can take when this value changes. Obviously, if you have something in your UI that's depending on this variable, like, if view model dot setting, and you have a new view there or something, like that's going to change when settings value changes, right? But what if you want to make like a network request or change something in core data or whatever it might be? Maybe you want to make a print statement. This method does not actually allow you to do that. It's kind of a reactive thing. And I guess you could use this if you were just changing the color of something on the screen, but it's not perfect. So there's one other option to try here. If we import combine, we can add an on receive here. And for the publisher, you do a just of view model dot setting. And then you have an output kind of callback block here, setting value in. So this is going to get called when that value changes, and you get to do something with setting, which sounds like exactly what we want, right? It's a block where you can call another method, you can make a network request, do whatever you want here. Like most of us, we're probably all coming from UIKit, where you have a UI switch and you have some kind of method that gets called when that switch value changes, and you think that this is a good replacement for it, but it's not a perfect replacement. This is okay for some situations, but what is actually happening here is this is going to get called anytime that value is set, which also means it's going to get called anytime your view is redrawn. So if another value in your view is redrawn, your method's going to get called because of the way that SwiftUI is kind of recreating everything on the fly, right? I think there are some ways around this, like using a state object rather than an observed object, but in a lot of cases, this is the problem you're going to run into, and it's not obvious from basic testing, and it can result in a really weird bug that's kind of hard to track down. So on receive is cool, but it's not perfect. I'll tell you what is perfect. We'll go back to our settings view model, and I'm just going to create a lazy variable, and it's going to be of the binding Boolean type like we wanted. And within this lazy variable initializer block, we're actually going to use a binding initializer get set, which is actually perfect for what we want, because in the get block, you're just going to pass back self.setting because you just want to use whatever that value is, right? And in the set block, we've got new value in, and we can assign self.setting here, and also call whatever function we want. I'm going to actually rename that to setting binding because we already have a setting, so duh. But anyway, this is going to take care of that, and this is actually going to get called when you think it would get called, when it is actually set from an action rather than a redraw. how that's used is instead of passing viewModel.setting, you're just going to pass viewModel.settingBinding, and that works perfectly in my testing. So this was just something that was awkward for me to figure out, and wanted to pass that along because it really helps bridge that gap between what we're doing in UIKit to what we're doing in SwiftUI. And this also applies to any binding that you're passing to a control in SwiftUI. So it could be a text field or a picker or whatever. And you can use this binding get set initializer, which I think is the best way to go. And even better is it lives in your view model rather than having to be like in an onReceive block attached to your view. It lets you really separate that code and that logic away from it, which is always a good thing too. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that this was a breakthrough for you too, like it was for me. And I will see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching.